It's strange how quickly trust can turn into paranoia. One day, you're certain you know the person beside you, their smile, their scent, the rhythm of their voice. Then something small breaks that illusion. For me, it was a location pin on my phone, blinking somewhere she said she'd never been. That tiny lie cracked everything open. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was out with a friend. Maybe she just forgot to tell me. But when your gut starts whispering, it doesn't stop. I started noticing patterns. Her stories not matching. Her phone always face down. The sudden late night errands. I didn't want to believe what I was thinking. But that's the thing about doubt. Once it creeps in, it doesn't leave quietly. One night, when she fell asleep beside me, I gave in to what I already knew was wrong. I unlocked her phone. It felt like crossing a moral line, but curiosity and hurt had already blurred what was right. The truth hit harder than I was ready for. Messages, photos, the kind of evidence that doesn't need explaining. My chest went hollow. I stared at the screen for a long time, the glow burning into my eyes. And I couldn't decide what felt worse, her betrayal or my weakness in needing to see it for myself. The next morning, she smiled at me like nothing had changed. I smiled back. I didn't say a word. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand why, to walk out and never look back. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to hold on, to understand, to punish in silence. That's when I realized how betrayal doesn't just wound you, it transforms you. It enables you to think thoughts you never imagined having. For days, I carried that secret. Every laugh she gave me sounded false. Every hug felt like an act. I started replaying everything we'd done together, looking for the moment she stopped being mine. It's like grief, but worse, because the person you're mourning is still right in front of you. I told no one. Instead, I built a wall of composure around myself, pretending things were fine while resentment brewed underneath. I analyzed everything, her tone, her habits, her excuses. I wanted to understand how someone could look at you every day and still lie so easily. It wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was fascination with deceit itself. That discovery, those few minutes on her phone, became the turning point. It wasn't only about her cheating anymore. It was about how betrayal exposes the darkest corners of who we are. How far would I go for closure? How much damage could I justify in the name of pain? Those questions haunted me. And before I knew it, they began shaping what I'd eventually do next. Anger has a way of disguising itself as reason. You tell yourself you're calm. I wasn't just hurt. I wanted her to feel something close to what I felt. Not the same, maybe, but a taste of it. I began replaying the betrayal over and over in my mind, each time twisting it into a new justification. She lied to me first. She broke the trust. I'm only giving back what she gave me. These were the excuses I built my revenge on. And the more I repeated them, the easier they were to believe. There's a moment, I think, where heartbreak crosses into obsession. When pain turns into something you start to feed, nurture, and even protect. I reached that point quietly. I didn't want to yell or confront her. I wanted control. She had taken it from me when she cheated, and I was desperate to take it back. No matter how small the gesture. That's where revenge begins, not with hate, but with the hunger to feel powerful again. I started watching her differently. Not as my girlfriend, but as someone I could manipulate without her noticing. Every time she smiled at me, trusting, I felt both satisfaction and disgust. The satisfaction came from the secret I held over her, the disgust from realizing what I was becoming. Still, I didn't stop. I told myself it was justice, that I deserved to even the scales somehow. But deep down, it wasn't about balance. It was about control. I started thinking of ways to get back at her, not through shouting or breaking things, but through small, invisible actions. Things that wouldn't look like revenge, but would give me a sense of hidden power. That's when I realized how revenge rarely looks cinematic. It's quiet. It's calculated. It hides behind kindness and patience. I'd cook for her more often. I'd offer her things, help her, comfort her. On the outside, I was the picture of a loving boyfriend. Inside, I was plotting. The twisted part is that these moments almost felt intimate again, like the early days of our relationship. But now I was using that closeness as a weapon. Looking back, I see how dangerous that mindset was. I convinced myself that she deserved it, that I was teaching her some kind of lesson. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I was lost in my own bitterness. I wasn't punishing her. I was destroying the version of myself that still believed in love. That's the first lie of revenge. It promises healing, but it only feeds the wound. It started small, almost innocent, the way most bad ideas do. I didn't wake up one day and decide to become manipulative. It was more like crossing one quiet line at a time, each step easier than the last. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't cheating back. I wasn't ending things dramatically. I was just taking control in my own way. That's how I justified it. The first thing I did was watch her habits closely. What she ate, when she scrolled through her phone, and how often she left the house. I started paying attention to her patterns the way you might study a stranger. It felt wrong, but it also gave me this strange sense of order, like I was finally steering the ship again. I told myself I was just observing, but deep down I knew I was preparing to use what I learned. Then came the lies, small ones at first. I'll pick you up. I already checked that for you. You can trust me. Each one built the illusion that I was still the caring, attentive boyfriend she thought I was. But behind every gesture, there was calculation. I was shaping her world without her noticing, deciding what she ate, where she went, and even what she believed about me. It's easy to convince yourself you're not crossing any lines when the harm is invisible. I wasn't hitting or shouting or threatening. I was smiling, cooking for her, asking how her day was. She had no idea that my kindness was hollow, that I was using affection as a disguise for control. I thought that if I could quietly change the rules, make her dependent on me again, I'd win back some of the power she stole. But what I didn't realize then was that every lie, no matter how small, wasn't just reshaping her world. It was reshaping mine. I started to lose sight of who I was before the betrayal. The more I manipulated, the more detached I became. I wasn't acting out of love or even pain anymore. It was a habit, a dark, creeping addiction to control. There were moments when she'd look at me with that same trusting smile, the one that used to make me feel safe. And instead of warmth, I'd feel guilt rising in my chest. But I'd push it down, telling myself she deserved this. That lie became my armor. It let me sleep at night. Looking back now, that was the point where everything began to rot quietly beneath the surface. I was still pretending to love her, but there was no honesty left in anything I did. I had turned into someone I didn't recognize, someone who confused control with justice. And once you start walking that path, it's hard to tell where the line between punishment and cruelty actually is. For a while, it felt like I had finally regained control. That was the illusion I lived in, believing I was the one quietly pulling the strings, shaping how things went between us. She still smiled at me the same way, trusted me, leaned into me when we watched a movie. On the surface, we were fine, maybe even better than before, but inside, I knew the balance had shifted. I wasn't the same person anymore. Something is intoxicating about feeling powerful again after you've been humiliated. It's not real power. It's fragile and built on lies, but it feels like relief. Each day she stayed close. Each secret I kept made me believe I'd turned the tables. I could decide how things went now. I told myself I was in control of the story. I thought that if I could hold on to that feeling long enough, maybe I wouldn't hurt anymore. But power without honesty is a poison. The more I tasted it, the more I needed it. I'd catch myself watching her reactions, testing small boundaries just to see how much I could influence her without her noticing. It became a game I couldn't stop playing. I'd see how easily she trusted me, how she followed my lead, and I'd feel this twisted satisfaction. I told myself I was just making things right, but what I was really doing was feeding my ego. The truth is, revenge doesn't heal anything. It just numbs you. For a while, that numbness feels like peace. The anger quiets down, the pain dulls, and you start to believe that you've moved on. I walked around like I was untouchable, convincing myself that I had outsmarted the person who hurt me. But underneath that calm surface, something was rotting. Every time she looked at me with affection, a part of me felt disgusted, with her and with myself. I'd smile back, act like everything was fine, and then feel the guilt crawl up afterward. I couldn't tell her the truth, but I couldn't stop what I was doing either. I was addicted to that fake sense of control, the illusion that I was the one deciding how she lived her days. There's a dangerous comfort in manipulation. It gives you the illusion of order in the middle of chaos. You tell yourself you're fixing things, balancing the scales, but all you're doing is building a cage around both of you. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought I was reclaiming my dignity. In reality, I was burying it, and still, I couldn't stop. The more she trusted me, the more powerful I felt. I thought I'd won something. But what I didn't see yet was that every secret victory was hollow. I hadn't taken control back. I'd just traded honesty for dominance, love for deceit. It would take time for me to understand that what I called power was really the beginning of my own downfall. It's strange how guilt hides behind satisfaction. For a while, I convinced myself everything was fine. She seemed happy, or at least comfortable, and I took that as proof that what I was doing wasn't really hurting anyone. I told myself she'd moved on from the affair, that we were closer now, that maybe my quiet revenge was just helping me heal. But that was a lie I wanted to believe. The truth was harder to face. I started noticing changes in her, subtle at first. She laughed less. She looked tired more often. Sometimes she'd ask, "Are you okay? You seem distant." And I'd smile, deflect, tell her I was just stressed from work. Inside, though, I could feel the weight of what I was doing pressing on me. Every time I lied, a little piece of who I used to be chipped away. I'd watch her from across the room, this person I once loved so openly, and I'd feel something complicated, part guilt, part pride, part sadness. She had no idea how much I knew, no idea how much of her life I was quietly shaping, and she trusted me completely. That trust, the thing I once cherished, had become my weapon. As the weeks went on, I began to see the effects of my manipulation in ways I hadn't expected. Her energy changed. Her confidence dimmed. She'd make small comments about feeling off, like she couldn't figure out why she was gaining weight or why she felt so exhausted lately. And instead of feeling empathy, I felt power. That's when I realized how far I'd fallen. I told myself it wasn't really my fault, that she'd done worse, that she'd lied first. But watching her start to doubt herself, to lose the spark that made me fall for her in the first place, it wasn't satisfying anymore. It was unsettling. I'd catch myself staring at her when she wasn't looking, feeling this wave of guilt so strong I had to look away. I started to wonder if I was the one becoming the villain in my own story. Her friends began to notice too. Little things. They'd comment that she seemed quieter, different. I'd sit there pretending to agree, offering excuses that sounded reasonable. She's been working a lot. She's just stressed. And each time, the lie slipped out easier than before. That's what scared me most. How natural it was becoming to deceive. There's something deeply disturbing about watching someone unravel and knowing you had a hand in it. I used to think revenge would make me feel powerful, that it would even the score. But instead, it made me feel hollow. I had become a mirror of the person who hurt me, secretive, dishonest, manipulative. What started as payback had turned into something darker. And even though she still smiled at me, still said she loved me, I couldn't look at her without seeing the damage in her eyes. And knowing it wasn't just her I'd broken, it was both of us. The longer I kept my secret, the heavier it became. Guilt has a way of seeping into everything: conversations, quiet moments, even sleep. I'd wake up some mornings and watch her getting ready, brushing her hair, humming softly, and I'd feel this sharp ache in my chest. She had no idea what I'd done, no clue how deep the deception went. And yet, She still looked at me with complete trust. That was the part that hurt the most. Outwardly, nothing had changed. We went out with friends, posted pictures, and laughed at jokes. People thought we were solid again, maybe even stronger than before. But I could see the cracks forming beneath the surface. She'd start asking small questions. Did you see my phone earlier? Or have I been eating more lately? And every time, I'd brush it off with a gentle laugh. It wasn't suspicion exactly, more like confusion. But I could tell something in her had started to shift. Meanwhile, the guilt I kept buried was turning into paranoia. I started worrying that someone would find out, that she'd somehow piece things together. Every innocent question sounded like a trap. Every look felt like she might know. I'd catch myself studying her expressions, searching for signs of discovery. It became exhausting, pretending to be loving while carrying the weight of what I'd done. The worst part was how natural I'd become at lying. At first, every deception felt heavy, deliberate. But over time, it became reflexive. The words came easily, smoothly. I could tell her anything with a straight face. That scared me. I didn't like the person I was turning into. Somewhere along the way, I stopped recognizing myself. And then, there were the people around us, friends, family, coworkers. They'd compliment us on how stable we seemed, how good it was that we worked things out. Every time someone said that, I felt something twist inside me. Stability was the last word I'd use. I was building everything we had on a foundation of lies, and somehow, it still looked picture perfect from the outside. Sometimes she'd rest her head on my shoulder while we watched a movie, and I'd feel this overwhelming guilt crash into me. I'd want to tell her everything, to admit that I knew that I'd been manipulating things ever since. But I couldn't. I told myself it would ruin her, that it would ruin us. The truth is, I was afraid of losing control. I'd built a world where I was finally in charge, and the thought of tearing it all down terrified me. But the cracks were spreading. I could feel her energy shifting. There were more quiet moments, more distance between us. She wasn't laughing as much. Sometimes she'd look at me like she was searching for something in my eyes, some honesty that wasn't there anymore. And I'd look away, pretending not to notice. That's when it hit me. All the control I thought I had was slipping away. The guilt had turned into a constant hum in the back of my mind, louder every day. I had tried to punish her, but in the process, I'd trapped myself too. I was living in the same lie I built for her, and it was slowly consuming me. It all started to fall apart faster than I expected. The illusion I'd built of control, of peace, of quiet revenge began to crumble the moment things stopped going my way. She was changing, and not in the ways I planned. The same woman I'd once manipulated so easily was becoming harder to read. Her laughter was rare now, her eyes tired, her tone shorter when we spoke. Something in her was breaking, and instead of feeling satisfied, I started to feel scared. The nights were the hardest. We'd sit together, barely talking, the silence between us heavier than it used to be. She'd pick at her food, lost in thought, and I'd watch her, half worried, half resentful. This wasn't how I pictured revenge. I thought I'd feel vindicated watching her fall apart, that I'd finally get back some of the control she took when she cheated. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like watching someone drown while pretending I didn't notice. Then came the arguments, small at first. She'd snap about something trivial, then apologize, clearly frustrated with herself. Sometimes she'd cry out of nowhere, and I'd sit there frozen, unsure whether to comfort her or stay silent. My lies had created a version of reality that even I couldn't manage anymore. The balance I thought I had started slipping from my hands. I began to see the chaos I'd unleashed. Her confidence was gone. She second-guessed everything she did, asked for reassurance constantly, and blamed herself for things she didn't even understand. The revenge that once made me feel powerful now felt cruel. I had broken something fragile, and no amount of pretending could hide it. But the real turning point came when I realized I wasn't just losing her, I was losing myself. The guilt had become unbearable. I'd catch myself zoning out at work, replaying conversations in my head, wondering how I got here. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I couldn't even look at myself without feeling disgust. Every time she said she loved me, it hit like a punch to the chest. She had no idea that the person she loved was the reason she was slowly falling apart. Eventually, the smallest things started setting me off. Her questions, her silence, even her attempts to connect felt like accusations. I was constantly on edge, paranoid she'd discover the truth. I started sleeping less, drinking more, anything to quiet my thoughts. But the guilt didn't fade. It grew louder, sharper, harder to ignore. The revenge that once gave me a sense of control had turned into chaos I couldn't contain. I'd crossed so many lines that there was no going back, and yet I couldn't bring myself to confess. It wasn't just about fear of losing her anymore. It was about facing what I'd become. I wanted to believe I was the victim once, the one who'd been wronged. But by this point, I was no better than the person who betrayed me. I was worse. She may have lied about love, but I'd twisted it into something unrecognizable. The relationship wasn't built on betrayal anymore. It was built on cruelty. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before it collapsed completely. It happened on an ordinary evening, the kind where nothing feels significant until it suddenly is. She had been quieter than usual all week, withdrawn but observant, as if she was trying to piece something together. I could sense her distance, that subtle shift in energy when someone starts seeing through you. Still, I convinced myself she wouldn't find out. I'd been careful. I always was. But the truth has a strange way of surfacing, no matter how deeply you bury it. That night, she asked me a simple question, something about whether I'd noticed her gaining weight or feeling different lately. My throat went dry. I laughed it off, pretending to be confused, but her eyes didn't leave mine. There was no accusation in them, just quiet suspicion. It was the kind of look that, one evening, she laid her phone on the table, screen facing up, just like I used to do when I was hiding something. Then she asked, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I wanted to lie again, to keep the illusion alive, but her tone, steady, tired, and sad, cut through me. It wasn't anger I heard. It was disappointing. That was worse. I didn't confess everything, not at first. I danced around the truth, offering half admissions, carefully chosen words to soften what I'd done. But the more I talked, the more it all unraveled. She just listened. No shouting, no tears, just quiet, devastating calm. When I finally ran out of excuses, she said, "You could have just told me you were hurt. You didn't have to become someone else." That sentence hit harder than any argument could. I realized she wasn't just talking about the lies or the manipulation. She was talking about the person I'd become in the process, the cold, controlled version of myself that had replaced the one who used to love her honestly. After that night, things changed permanently. She didn't scream or throw me out. Instead, she withdrew completely. Her trust, the thing I'd taken for granted, was gone. We still lived together for a while, but it felt like sharing space with a stranger. Every conversation was cautious, clipped, almost polite. I could feel her slipping away, and for once, I didn't blame her. That confrontation stripped away the illusion I'd built for so long. I thought I was the one in control, but really, I'd been trapped in my own web. When she finally saw me for who I'd become, I couldn't even defend myself, because she was right. I hadn't just gotten revenge on her. I'd destroyed the part of me that was still capable of love. After the confrontation, silence became the loudest part of our lives. There were no more fights, no more lies, no more pretending that things could go back to how they were. Just distance, thick, unspoken, and impossible to escape. We'd pass each other in the kitchen, exchange polite words, and that was it. The love that once filled the space between us had turned into something heavy and hollow. For weeks, I replayed everything in my head. The moment I found out, the choices I made, the twisted satisfaction I once felt. I kept trying to justify it, to convince myself that I'd done what anyone would do after being betrayed. But that excuse stopped working. I started to see my actions for what they were: deliberate cruelty disguised as coping. What I'd done wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about control. I wanted to hurt her because she made me feel powerless. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that made it fair. But there's nothing fair about manipulation. It doesn't just destroy the person you target, it erodes everything human in you too. I learned that the hard way. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake next to her, listening to her slow, steady breathing, and feel this ache that wouldn't go away. The guilt wasn't just emotional, it was physical. It lived in my chest, tightening every time I looked at her and remembered how much I'd taken without her knowing. Eventually, she stopped trying to fix things. That was the real breaking point. When someone stops arguing, stops caring enough to fight, that's when you know it's over. She began spending more time away from home, reconnecting with friends, taking long drives alone. She didn't ask where I was going anymore, didn't check in, didn't look for reassurance. Her silence said everything. She'd already let go. And that's when the reality hit me. I hadn't won anything. I hadn't reclaimed power or balance. I'd just destroyed the one person who once loved me unconditionally. And for what? To feel in control for a few months? To satisfy a wound that revenge could never heal? I started realizing that in trying to punish her, I'd punished myself. Every lie I told her had chipped away at whatever goodness was left in me. I thought revenge would make me feel whole again, but it only deepened the emptiness. Watching her move on, seeing her reclaim her life without me, was brutal. Not because I missed being with her, but because I finally understood the cost of what I'd done. In the end, there was no dramatic closure, no final confrontation or apology that made things right. She just left quietly one morning, taking what little she still owned, and I didn't stop her. I couldn't. I just stood there, realizing that all the control I'd once fought for meant nothing. What remained was the aftermath, the weight of my choices, the silence of an empty apartment, and the knowledge that the person I became in the name of revenge was far worse than the person who once hurt me. I'd become the lesson I never wanted to learn. It's strange how quiet redemption feels. There's no grand moment, no music swelling, no applause when you finally face yourself. It just begins one morning, slowly, almost shyly, when you realize you're tired of being the villain in your own story. After she left, the silence in that apartment was unbearable. At first, I filled it with distractions, loud music, long drives, and meaningless conversations with people who didn't really know me. Anything to drown out the echo of what I'd done. But nothing worked. The noise only made the guilt louder. Every corner of that place held a memory. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her favorite tea. Her books were gone, but the shelf she built remained, empty and lopsided. And on the bathroom mirror, faint under the steam, I could still see the words she once wrote with her finger. "We'll be okay." That sentence haunted me. Because we weren't okay. And it was my fault. I started writing things down. Not because I thought it would make me feel better, but because I needed to see the truth in front of me, to strip away the excuses and face the version of myself I'd spent so long denying. What